Rejected Omega, abandoned to survive a deadly blizzard. The Alpha King sensed her scent and found her. Her legs ached with every step, and her lungs burned from the bitter, frozen air. She could barely see more than a few feet ahead. The world had become a blur of white and gray, a place where only the strongest survived, and she had been abandoned. Lyra's clan had cast her out hours ago, or perhaps it felt like days. She could no longer tell. The memory of their faces haunted her, eyes full of disgust, voices sharp with rejection. "You are cursed, Omega," they had said, "unfit to stay among us." She had begged, cried, even pleaded for mercy, but their hearts were as cold as the wind that now howled around her. She stumbled on a hidden rock, falling hard into the snow. Pain shot through her shoulder and she buried her face in the powdery frost, trying to catch her breath. Her fingers were stiff, her body trembling not just from cold but from fear. She had no shelter, no fire, no food. Her survival depended on nothing but willpower, a faint ember of life refusing to die. But the mountain seemed determined to end her journey. Every gust threatened to knock her off balance, every ridge was a trap, every shadow a whisper of death. Lyra pressed on, forcing her feet to move despite the pain. She knew she could not stop. To stop meant death. Her mind wandered, unbidden, to the curse she bore. It was an ancient mark, a shadow that followed her since birth. Some said it was a punishment from the old gods. Others whispered it was a stain of bad blood. She did not know the truth. What she did know was that the clan had feared her, treated her as something unnatural, something to be hidden away or destroyed. And now they had left her to die in the storm. Lyra shivered violently, wrapping her arms around herself. She could feel the snow melting against her skin, soaking through her thin clothing. Each step became more difficult than the last. Her body screamed for rest, her mind for comfort, but neither would come. The mountains were merciless. Hours, or maybe moments, passed. Time seemed meaningless in the blizzard. The world was a blur of white, and every sound was swallowed by the roar of the wind. Lyra's thoughts became hazy, drifting between memory and nightmare. She remembered the warmth of the fire at the clan hall, the laughter she had almost allowed herself to join, the fleeting moments when she had felt like she belonged. But all of it had ended. And then, a scent. At first it was faint, barely noticeable over the storm. But there was something different about it, something powerful and commanding. Lyra froze, her instincts screaming that danger was near, but also something else, something deeper, primal. Her heart raced. She had never smelled anything like it before. It was strong, wild, yet familiar in a way she could not explain. A shadow moved through the storm. A figure, large and imposing, emerged from the white haze. Lyra could barely make out the shape, but she sensed its power immediately. Her fear battled with curiosity. Should she run? Could she run? Her legs trembled, but there was no energy left for fleeing. "You are far from home," a deep, resonant voice said, cutting through the wind like a blade. The words were gentle, yet carried authority. Lyra's eyes widened. She could not see the face clearly, only the glint of piercing eyes reflecting the storm. The figure moved closer, and with each step the scent grew stronger. It was intoxicating, commanding, impossible to ignore. Who are you?" Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "You are in no condition to stand alone," the figure replied. "You do not belong out here, yet you fight to survive. That is rare." Lyra's chest heaved. She wanted to speak, to explain, to beg, but the cold stole her words. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and the snow beneath her feet was beginning to melt with her warmth. She sank to her knees, certain she could go no further. The figure knelt beside her, the snow swirling around them like a living storm. Despite the blizzard, a strange warmth radiated from him. Lyra blinked, surprised at the intensity of his gaze. It was not cruel nor harsh, yet it demanded respect, obedience, and attention. It was the look of one who had power over life and death, yet chose mercy. "You will not survive this night alone," he said. His voice held a strange softness like a promise but also the weight of command. "I will help you." Lyra's lips parted, unable to form words. She wanted to refuse, to tell him she needed no one, that she could survive alone, but the truth was clear. She could not. She could barely lift her head, barely drag her feet. Her pride, though strong, had no power against the blizzard. He reached out a hand, and the scent, stronger now, almost unbearable in its intensity, drew her closer. Lyra felt something stir within her, something she had never felt before. Safety, curiosity, fear, longing, all mixed together into a storm more powerful than the one outside. With his help, she struggled to her feet. Every movement was agony, but his presence made it possible. She clung to him instinctively, as if the very act of holding on could save her life. And perhaps it could. The mountains stretched endlessly around them, the storm raging without mercy. Yet for the first time in hours, Lyra felt a sliver of hope. The figure beside her moved with ease through the blizzard, steps sure and confident, cutting a path through the frozen chaos. He never spoke again, but his silence carried weight. It was an unspoken command: follow, survive, trust. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. The storm seemed endless, but he guided her, protecting her from hidden cliffs, deep snowdrifts, and sudden patches of ice. Lyra's body screamed for rest, but she could not stop. She clung to him, her exhaustion made bearable by his strength, his warmth, his presence. Finally, they reached a rocky overhang. It was little more than a shallow cave, but it offered shelter from the wind. Lyra collapsed onto the snow, too tired to care. The figure knelt beside her, scanning the storm as if daring it to touch her again. "You are safe for now," he said. The words were soft, almost intimate, yet carried the power of absolute certainty. Lyra looked up at him, still shivering, still weak, but her heart thundering with emotion she could not name. Why help me?" she whispered. Her voice was raw, brittle, like the fragile ice that covered the mountains. He tilted his head as if studying her. "Because you survive when others would not. Because you are remarkable. Because—" he paused, the wind carrying his words away before she could hear them. "Because fate has brought you to me." Lyra shivered again, but not from the cold. There was something in his gaze, something that stirred something deep inside her, something she had thought was dead. She wanted to understand, to ask, to demand, but the exhaustion made her silent. She let him be the anchor in the storm, the one presence that could guide her through the chaos. The night dragged on. Snow piled around the cave entrance, the wind screaming like a living thing. Lyra huddled in a corner, watching him. He did not sleep, did not rest. He simply sat, alert, scanning the darkness beyond their small shelter. His presence was overwhelming, yet comforting, terrifying, yet safe. In the silence, Lyra's mind wandered. She thought of her clan, of their rejection, of the curse she bore. She thought of the blizzard, the mountains, the endless cold. And she thought of him, this Alpha King, this stranger, this force of nature who had found her when all else had abandoned her. Her heart beat faster, a mix of fear and awe. She did not know what lay ahead, nor did she know if she would survive the coming night. But for the first time she felt a spark of something she had thought impossible: hope. And then from the wind came a faint sound. A howl, distant but unmistakable. Lyra's blood ran cold. The storm was not done. There were creatures in the mountains, shadows that moved with deadly purpose, forces that tested the strong and consumed the weak. She looked at him, and in the flicker of firelight she saw it. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, ready to face whatever came for her. The blizzard raged outside, but inside that small shelter, two figures huddled against the storm. One was broken, battered, abandoned. The other was powerful, commanding, and mysterious, and somehow together they would survive or die. Lyra shivered, not just from cold, but from anticipation. She could feel the storm reaching for her, reaching for them both. And she knew, deep in her bones, that this night was only the beginning. The Alpha King's scent, strong and wild, lingered in the air. It called to her, drew her, awakened something she had long thought lost. And in the depths of the blizzard, Lyra understood one terrifying, thrilling truth. She had been found. The storm outside had not ended, but inside the fortress the air was warmer, heavy with smoke and the scent of burning pine. Lyra stumbled through the gates, her legs weak, her body trembling from exhaustion. The Alpha King, Kaelin, moved beside her effortlessly, his presence steady and unyielding. Every step he took seemed to command the cold, as if the blizzard dared not touch him here. Lyra's heart beat rapidly, a mixture of relief and fear. The walls of the fortress towered above her, carved from dark stone and ice, ancient and unyielding. Shadows flickered along the halls, and the distant roar of the wind was replaced by silence and the faint echo of distant footsteps. This place was alive, full of history and power, and yet it felt lonely. "You can rest now," Kaelin said, his voice cutting through the tension. It was deep, steady, and full of authority. He led her to a small chamber, simple but warm, with furs strewn across a raised platform and a fire flickering in the corner. "Sit, eat, recover." Lyra sank to her knees near the fire, her body too heavy with fatigue to move further. She could feel the warmth seep into her frozen bones, and for the first time in what felt like forever, her body relaxed slightly. Her gaze drifted to Kaelin. He watched her with an intensity that made her heart clench. There was no judgment, only awareness. He noticed everything, her exhaustion, her fear, her pride, even the tremor in her hands. "You are strong," he said, finally breaking the silence. "Stronger than you know. That is why you survived the blizzard." Lyra shook her head. "I didn't survive, I barely made it. And even if I did, I'm nothing. Just a rejected Omega, cursed and unfit." Her voice was bitter, full of despair. Kaelin's eyes darkened, not with anger but with something heavier, more contemplative. He knelt in front of her, so close that she could see the sharp planes of his face, the strength in his jaw, the fire in his eyes. "Do not call yourself nothing. You fought when no one else would. You faced death and the elements, and you endured. That is more than most can claim." Lyra's gaze fell to the floor, ashamed. She had been taught to hide her weakness, to pretend she was less than she was. Yet here was a man, a king, acknowledging her strength, not with pity but with recognition. It was unsettling and unfamiliar. "Why help me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why risk your own safety for someone like me?" Kaelin's gaze softened just slightly. "Because you survived when others would not. Because your spirit calls to me in a way I cannot ignore. Because the world is cruel and sometimes we must protect what is rare, even if we do not fully understand it." Lyra swallowed hard. His words stirred something inside her, a mix of hope, confusion, and fear. She did not understand why this man, so powerful and imposing, had found her. And yet, she could not deny the relief that washed over her. For the first time, she felt she was not completely alone. The fire crackled, filling the silence that fell between them. Lyra's thoughts wandered to the blizzard, to the cold mountains that had tried to claim her life. She shivered again, but this time not entirely from cold. There was a presence beside her that was both terrifying and comforting, a force that made her feel small yet seen. Kaelin stood and moved to the window, looking out at the raging storm. The world beyond these walls is harsh, unforgiving, and yet it shapes those who survive it. "You are not weak, Lyra. You are unbroken." Lyra's breath caught at the use of her name. Only her mother had ever spoken it with kindness. Her clan had never used it except to mock her. And now, a stranger, a king, spoke it with respect. I don't know if I can belong anywhere," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've been cast out my whole life. I've learned that survival means being alone." Kaelin turned to her, his eyes piercing yet gentle. "Belonging is not given, it is earned, and sometimes it is chosen. You have the strength to choose your own path, Lyra. That is why you are here with me, not with those who abandoned you." Her chest tightened. She wanted to reject him, to cling to the only identity she had ever known, the rejected Omega, yet his presence was like a tide pulling her from despair. She could not resist entirely, and the truth terrified her. She was beginning to trust him. The night stretched on. Lyra ate slowly, her hands shaking as she held the simple bread and stew Kalen had provided. He watched quietly, alert, always aware of the world outside their small room. She noticed that he never truly relaxed, that his power and vigilance were constant. It was intimidating and somehow reassuring. After she had eaten, Kalen knelt beside the fire, his expression unreadable. "You may sleep now," he said. "But know this, danger does not rest. The blizzard brought more than snow tonight. Forces that seek to harm you follow. They will test you and they will test me." "Are you ready?" Lyra hesitated, her mind racing. She had survived the storm, but now there were new threats she could not see, could not understand. Yet she nodded, a small, hesitant gesture. I will try." Kalen inclined his head slightly, a gesture that was both acknowledgement and approval. "Good. That is all I ask for now. Strength is not the absence of fear, Lyra. It is moving forward despite it." Exhaustion finally overcame her. She curled up near the fire, letting the warmth seep into her frozen body. Kalen remained beside her, vigilant, his gaze sweeping the room and the halls beyond. She felt the weight of his presence, not as a threat, but as a shield. As she drifted into a restless sleep, her dreams were filled with memories of the blizzard, the endless white, the wind biting at her skin, the moments when she thought death was near. But there were also new images, a dark figure standing beside her, unwavering, his eyes burning with intensity and protection. She could not understand the feeling it stirred inside her, only that it was strong, consuming, and impossible to ignore. Hours later, Lyra awoke to a strange stillness. The storm had quieted, but the air remained sharp and cold. She rubbed her eyes and realized she was not alone. Kalen had moved to the center of the room, standing tall, his eyes scanning the shadows outside the window. "You slept well?" he asked, his voice softer than before, almost curious. Lyra hesitated, unsure how to respond. I think so. The fire helped." Kalen nodded. "Good. You will need strength for what comes next. The blizzard was only the beginning. There are those who wish to see you fail, to claim the power you carry within you, and they will come." Lyra's heart raced. She had survived rejection, abandonment, and the storm. Now there were new threats, forces unseen, dangerous, and relentless. And yet she no longer felt completely helpless. With Kalen by her side there was hope, and hope was a dangerous, beautiful thing. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why me? Why now?" Kalen's gaze softened slightly, the edge of authority never leaving his tone. "Because fate chooses the rare, Lyra, the strong, the unbroken, the overlooked. And you are all of these. That is why I found you. That is why you are here and why you will survive." Lyra swallowed hard. She wanted to doubt, to reject, to hide behind the armor she had built from years of pain. But the truth was undeniable. She could feel the strength in him, the certainty, the power that commanded respect and demanded attention. And she could feel something else too, a connection she had never known, something that made her chest ache and her heart beat faster. Before she could speak again, a sound echoed from the halls, a soft, deliberate step, too quiet to belong to any servant or guard. Lyra froze. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "They are here," he said, his voice low and steady, filled with warning. Her pulse quickened. "Who?" Kalen did not answer immediately. He moved toward the door, his hand on the hilt of a sword she had not noticed before. "Those who wish to harm you have followed. They will not stop until they succeed, but they will not find you weak." Lyra's breath caught. The warmth of the fire, the safety of the room, the presence of Kalen, it all felt fragile now, like a thin veil between her and danger. Yet she also felt something else, determination. She had survived the blizzard, she had endured rejection, and now she would endure this. She rose unsteadily, standing beside him. I will help," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. Kalen's eyes softened, and for the first time Lyra saw a flicker of approval, almost pride. "Good. That is all I ask. Fear is natural, doubt is natural, but strength comes from rising despite them. Outside, the storm had faded, leaving the fortress in an eerie, snow-covered silence. But within its walls, two figures, one battered but unbroken, the other commanding and powerful, prepared to face the threats that waited in shadow. Together, they would endure. Together, they would fight. And perhaps, together, they would find something neither had expected: trust, respect, and the beginnings of something far more dangerous and beautiful than either could imagine. The shadow lingered in the hall, silent and deliberate. Lyra's heart pounded so hard she feared it would burst from her chest. She could feel Kaelin's strength radiating beside her, steady and unyielding, yet even he tensed, ready for whatever had come for her. The fortress, usually a place of power and security, seemed suddenly fragile against the unknown threat. "Stay close," Kaelin whispered, his voice low and commanding. "Whatever this is, it is not ordinary. It seeks to test you." Lyra nodded, though fear gripped her. The events of the last day, the blizzard, the abandonment, the long trek through the snow, the sanctuary of the fortress, had left her exhausted both in body and spirit. But she had survived again, and now she would not turn away. She would not run. Kaelin led her through winding corridors, past shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. The scent she had first noticed in the storm, the commanding presence of the Alpha King, remained close, a constant reassurance in the midst of danger. For the first time, Lyra realized she trusted someone entirely. It terrified her and freed her at the same time. The shadow revealed itself at last. A figure, cloaked in darkness, emerged from the hall, its movements deliberate and graceful. Eyes glinting with malice, it advanced slowly, as if calculating every step. Lyra felt a chill creep over her, but she did not falter. She remembered Kaelin's words: "Strength is not the absence of fear, but moving forward despite it." Kaelin stepped forward, placing himself between Lyra and the figure. His presence was overwhelming, the power of his alpha aura palpable, almost physical. The shadow hesitated, recognizing the authority and strength he commanded. Lyra felt a surge of courage rise within her. If he could face such power, then so could she. "You will not harm her," Kaelin said, his voice low but carrying authority like thunder. "Step back or face the consequences." The shadow paused, and in that moment, Lyra noticed something strange. Beneath the cloak, the figure seemed almost human, yet something was wrong. An unnatural energy pulsed around it, a lingering curse. Lyra's mind raced. This was no ordinary enemy. This was the force that had cursed her, the one that had followed her from the clan, testing her strength, waiting for the right moment to strike. Kaelin's eyes never left the figure. "Lyra," he said quietly, "you are ready. Face it. Stand with me, not behind me. You are stronger than you know." Lyra's chest tightened. She had lived her life in fear, believing herself weak and unworthy. But now, with Kaelin beside her, she felt a strange courage. She took a step forward, then another, until she stood beside him, no longer trembling, no longer shrinking. The shadow hissed, recognizing the shift. Lyra felt the energy of her own strength stirring, the inner fire that had kept her alive through the blizzard, through abandonment, through despair. She raised her chin, meeting the dark figure's gaze. For the first time, she did not feel like the cursed Omega. She felt powerful. Kaelin moved with her in perfect harmony, every action precise, controlled, and protective. Yet he did not dominate her. He let her stand, let her act, let her prove herself. The balance between them was delicate, like two forces moving as one. The shadow struck first, a blur of motion aimed to catch them off guard. Lyra's reflexes, honed by the long struggle for survival, saved her. She dodged, narrowly escaping, and instinctively pushed back with the strength she had discovered in herself. It was clumsy but effective. The shadow staggered, surprised by her resolve. Kaelin moved swiftly, intercepting the figure with the grace of a predator. His sword flashed in the dim light, precise and deadly, yet never aimed to kill outright. The strike was a warning, a challenge. Lyra understood. This was a test, not only of strength but of courage and heart. She raised her hands, feeling the pulse of energy in the air, the lingering curse that had followed her. She focused on it, letting her fear fuel her determination rather than paralyze her. Slowly, the power that had haunted her seemed to respond, recoiling from her newfound will. She realized with astonishment that the curse was tied to her fear. And fear was no longer her master. The shadow shrieked, a sound like cracking ice, and lunged again. Lyra met it with unwavering eyes, stepping forward to confront it. Kaelin was beside her, their movements synchronized, but she felt the power of her own heart and spirit guiding her as well. She did not need to hide. She did not need to flee. She was alive, strong, and unbroken. Finally, with a coordinated movement, Kaelin forced the shadow back, and Lyra stepped forward to deliver the final act. She did not strike in anger, only in purpose, letting her courage and inner strength shine through. The shadow faltered, the energy around it dissipating like mist in the sun. With a final cry, it vanished into nothingness, leaving only silence in the hall. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. Kaelin knelt beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You did it," he said, his voice steady, filled with awe and respect. "You faced what others could not. You are remarkable." Tears threatened to fall, but Lyra blinked them back. She could not believe it. She had survived the blizzard, the abandonment, the fear, and now she had faced the curse itself. And she had not only survived, she had conquered. Kaelin helped her to her feet. "You are no longer the Omega they cast aside," he said. "You are something greater. Stronger, braver, and unbroken. And now you are here with me." Lyra's heart raced. She wanted to speak, to deny, to run, but the words would not come. Instead, she simply looked at him, and for the first time she felt the warmth of trust, the thrill of belonging, and the stirrings of something deeper, something like hope, courage, and perhaps affection. The fortress seemed different now, less oppressive, less lonely. The fire flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls, but none threatened her. She was safe, not only in the fortress but beside Kaelin, whose strength was unmatched, yet who never sought to dominate her spirit. They walked through the halls together, the aftermath of the attack leaving a quiet tension in the air. Guards and attendants peeked nervously, but Kaelin's presence commanded respect. He introduced Lyra not as a weak Omega, but as a survivor, a force to be reckoned with, someone whose courage had saved her life. Lyra felt a sense of pride she had never known. The shame, the fear, the rejection of her past, it all felt smaller now, like a shadow fading before the light. She realized she had grown, not just in strength but in spirit. She had faced death and rejection, and yet she stood alive, unbroken, and recognized for who she truly was. Kaelin led her to a balcony overlooking the snow-covered mountains. The storm had passed, leaving a quiet, almost magical stillness. Snow sparkled in the moonlight, casting the landscape in silver and blue. Lyra breathed in the cold air, feeling it invigorate her, cleanse her, and remind her of the journey she had endured. "You see," Kaelin said, standing beside her, "even in the harshest storms, life finds a way. And so do you. You are alive, Lyra, and now you have a choice. You can return to the world that rejected you or stay here where you are valued, respected, and protected." Lyra turned to him, searching his eyes. She saw no judgment, no pressure, only trust and expectation. She understood for the first time that belonging was not something given, it was something chosen, and she could choose. Her mind flickered to the mountains, the blizzard, and the clan that had abandoned her. She had survived, yes, but she had survived with Kaelin, who had seen her strength, her courage, and her heart. She felt a warmth she had never known, a connection that defied logic and reason, yet was undeniable. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped closer to him. I choose to stay," she said, her voice firm, carrying the weight of her decision and the power of her journey. Kaelin's eyes softened and a faint, almost imperceptible smile appeared. "Then it is so," he said. "But know this, Lyra, your journey does not end here. You have survived storms, curses, and rejection. Ahead lies even greater challenge, greater danger, and greater truth. But you will face it, and we will face it together." Lyra felt her chest tighten, a mixture of fear and anticipation. She had come so far, endured so much, and yet the path ahead was still unknown. But she no longer felt alone. She had strength, she had purpose, and she had Kaelin, an alpha king who had recognized her worth when the world had not. The wind outside whispered through the mountains, carrying with it a faint promise of new challenges and distant dangers. Lyra breathed deeply, feeling the cold and the fire within her merge into something powerful. She was no longer the rejected Omega. She was alive, strong, and ready. And beside her, Kaelin stood as both protector and equal, a force she could trust, a companion in the storm, and perhaps something more. For the first time, Lyra felt truly free.